Welcome everyone to Bird Language with Hillary Behr and Kyle Ball. We're going to open with a poem and then I'll introduce Hillary and Kyle. We're all here on Zoom together in our different places, but on the same earth rests beneath. But the same earth rests beneath our feet. So take a minute to settle in, take a breath, and appreciate this land that has been inhabited for 12,000 years or more, or since time immemorial, by the ancestors of today's Wabanaki and Abenaki people. So I'm going to start with a quick reading of What Gorgeous Thing by Mary Oliver. I do not know what gorgeous thing the bluebird keeps saying, his voice easing out of his throat, beak, body, into the pink air of the early morning. I like it, whatever it is. Sometimes it seems the only thing in the world that is without dark thoughts. Sometimes it seems the only thing in the world that is without questions that can't and probably never will be answered. The only thing that is entirely content with the pink, then clear white morning, and gratefully says so. All right. It is my pleasure to introduce Hillary and Kyle. Hillary Behr grew up exploring the woods and waters of Tamworth and still calls it home. She earned a degree in environmental conservation and spent 8 years in rural California working in land conservation and outdoor science education. Hillary has a master's of education and has worked as a teacher in many different settings, both outdoors and in the classroom, most recently teaching high school environmental science. And Kyle Ball grew up recreating in the White Mountains. With a childhood of hiking, he was drawn to forestry and wetland delineation. He earned a master's of science studying the effects of climate change and parasites on moose populations in northern New Hampshire. He is an avid wildlife tracker and holds a level 3 track and science certification from the internationally recognized Cyber Tracker North America. He has been birding by ear for 15 years and has been actively practicing bird language for 3 years. Hillary and Kyle jointly own and operate New England Wildlife Tracking, which was created to help foster a relationship between our neighbors and the life around us through wildlife tracking, bird language, and nature connection. We are so lucky to have these two gifted naturalists in our community. Thank you so much for being here tonight, both of you. And with that, I will turn things over.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Anna. Um, thanks to Chocorua Lake Conservancy. They've hosted us for uh, 2 or 3 years now, doing different workshops, and this is our third bird language workshop. And thanks to the audience. We know some of you, and some of you we have yet to meet, but we're excited to spend the next hour with you talking about bird language. If you want to learn more about our organization, newenglandwildlifetracking.com is our website, and we host a variety of events throughout the year and classes. So we're here to talk about and learn about bird language. A quick definition. Um, Bird language is a basic communication between species. And it's something that our ancestors for thousands and thousands of years have been clued into. So it's really written in our DNA. It's not something that was discovered, though there are certain people who have brought it back into the public sphere. It's something that we've always known. Um, Basically, birds are very sensitive to their environments, especially to threats, and they respond to those threats and other things in their environment through their body language and their vocalizations in exactly the same way that we do and that other animals do. The thing about birds is that, yeah, they're really sensitive and they're really visible and you can hear them. So we as humans and other animals, such as deer, pay attention to what they're doing in order to understand more about what's happening around us, maybe more than we can see or hear or perceive. And that's why it's fun for us to learn about it now because as naturalists or birders or just people who are interested in what's happening around them, we can look to the birds to find out more about that. Um, Kyle and I uh, have both spent years learning and thinking about bird language, but honestly, we're still learners. Everything that we know, we learned through reading and workshops and things that other people have taught us. So we need to give credit to those people. The I have a slide at the end of the presentation that will show you some of these resources, but Jon Young has done probably the most to bring bird language into back into the knowledge circle, and he wrote a book called What the Robin Knows. Um, I was able to take a bird language intensive with Dan Gardoki, who also partnered with Jon Young on his book. And then Jon Young, Seeing Through Native Eyes, is an audio recording that both Kyle and I have listened to. Those are like the big learning experiences that I've had. And then we've also gotten to do different bird sits with a lot of different people. And we'll tell you how to do a bird sit yourself towards the end of our presentation. Next, we're gonna tell you a few stories about our experiences with bird language, and I'm gonna let Kyle go first.
So the goal is that we're gonna tell you a few stories, and then we're going to um, kind of summarize um, what actually happened, what strategies we're employing, and what we're seeing and hearing uh, in order to come up with hypotheses about what other animals or birds might be on the landscape that we might not see, but the birds do see. And because we can uh, listen to what they're saying and see their body language, we can form these hypotheses about what might be going on just beyond our awareness. Um, so when I was reading Jon Young's book, I was like halfway through it. I was we were visiting some friends down in Massachusetts. And I was laying on the grass, reading the book, thinking about bird language, and behind me, I didn't even see it, um, but I heard this high-pitched, really intense sound, chirping, and I turn around because my mind's on bird language, so I'm like, any kind of disturbance that I'm hearing, I immediately like, what's going on over there? So that draws out my curiosity, and I turn around and I see these birds, songbirds, um, ditch, which is a term that means go as fast as they can into a low shrub to hide from something. Um, so they ditched into these shrubs and were able to stay in shelter from some threat. And so that was um, something that happened. It was a high intensity event, and I was like, I'm curious about what just happened. If I was just like, oh, there's a bird that went into the bush, I wouldn't have seen what happened next. Um, and so what I did was I just watched for a little bit. And so I um, just looked, I stayed as still as I could, and I looked at where the bird was alarming because now it was not only in the bush, but it was still alarming that there might be a threat nearby. And eventually, maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes later, um, I see movement up in the canopy of the tree, and there's a Cooper's hawk feeding on some poor critter, and that was the story. And I wouldn't have known the full story if I was just like, oh, there's a wily bird. It just went into the bush. But because there was a high intensity event and I was aware that maybe I can read something of it, um, and all I need is to observe and have some patience, I was able to then have this really nice bird sighting, and see this really cool behavior of the Cooper's hawk feeding on, I forget if it's a bird or a squirrel or something like that.
Probably a bird.
Probably bird. um, yeah, so that was really cool because it's very topical. I was reading that book. I recorded it on the back of the cover page because I just it was just so um, it's really neat to be able to learn about a subject and then immediately see it. And so that it just inspires you.
Um, yeah. And so bird language is happening around us all the time is the other thing. And like you were clued into it at that point, but it's always happening. And another thing that that story made me think of is that you didn't need to know the species of the birds. You just noticed their behavior. So you don't have to be like a bird ID person or expert to notice this stuff going on. Um, okay, my story is a few summers ago, I was going down to the local swimming hole on the river by our house and went down there, place that I'd been many, many times. And I'd had some background already in bird language, and I started hearing a chipmunk alarming. Birds aren't the only ones doing this. There are some really useful mammals too, and chipmunks are one of them. They also need to be super aware of threats because they're on the ground and a lot of things eat them. Um, so the chipmunk is doing its alarm, and everybody's probably heard the chip, 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 chip repeated over and over and over. And I'm like, oh, that chipmunk, yeah, it's alarming at me, but it wasn't actually making that noise. It was making a chop, 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 chop. And I knew that that was the um, aerial predator alarm. So chipmunks have two alarms. One they use for terrestrial predators that are on the ground, and another one they use for aerial predators. And but I thought it was alarming at me. I thought I was like, what is this chipmunk doesn't know what alarm to use here because I'm the one that's here. It's behind me and it's doing its aerial predator alarm. So I was like, I thought the chipmunk was making a mistake, which of course in hindsight is ridiculous because if a chipmunk made a mistake like that, it would already be dead. You know, like it's a matter of life and death. So they're experts. Um, but I was confused. Didn't looked around, didn't see any hawks. Didn't see anything in the sky. So I finished swimming, started walking back up the trail and flushed a hawk out of the trees as I was walking. So I guess the lesson there is like they know what they're doing.
Um, some people um, in history, so like native tribes across the world, actually used this practice to not just protect themselves from wild animals, but also from you know possible threats from other humans and stuff. Um, and so one of the ways that um, you can be cued in on with other humans is that like I was up at the top of Sandwich Dome and I was helping do like I was volunteering for the Forest Service and getting the numbers of people that were coming on which trail and um, where they were going, and so I was tallying all that. But the cool thing about doing that volunteer monitoring is that I just got to sit down at the top for an entire day. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna practice my bird language while I'm up here. And so um, there were dark-eyed juncos at the top of the mountain, and they have a couple of different alarms. One of them is like, it sounds like a little laser gun or something. It's like, doo, doo, doo. do, 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 do. And that's their alarm. And so I had been there for a while, and so like the birds had already kind of alarmed at me and then calmed down after 20 minutes is usually the rule of thumb is that if you go into an area and sit down, everything will calm down after 10, 20 minutes. And so I knew they weren't alarming at me. They're alarming at something else. And the other interesting thing is that they are cued into the other birds further on down the line. And so they know, or animals, they know when an animal that might be out of your hearing range is alarming down the trail. And so they can be aware of a threat that maybe they don't even see yet. And so it's pretty cool because then it's like a game of telephone. Um, and what that allows you to do is it actually lets you in on something is happening and it might be coming this way. And it's common on a trail, like a hiking trail, where you can tell that a person is coming towards you a full 2 minutes before you actually see them on the hiking trail. And so that's exactly what happened is the bird alarmed and kept alarming, and I didn't see anything for 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden some hikers came up and sat on the top. And so that's just a little view into how humans in the past have used bird language to uh, extend their awareness beyond what they can see or hear to protect themselves.
Um, my next story takes place on our back porch, and it must have been in like June. Um, and we were sitting in the house, but we had the back door open, and we started hearing like a real racket outside. And it was a couple of wrens alarming, so that sounds like and then catbirds. I told Kyle I needed to practice my bird imitations, but yeah. That's better. Um, and so I'm hearing this boat happening at the same time. And so I walked out back. I was still hearing it. And pretty soon, a skunk, sort of like ambled into view, going slow. And these birds were just in the shape of an umbrella, pointing at the skunk and making these alarms and following it as it was moving through the underbrush. And it was coming to our compost pile, of course. Uh, this is called a parabolic alarm. There's different shapes of alarms. Kyle mentioned a ditch. That's one shape, parabolic. There's also a bird plow, which is the shape that humans usually make as they're moving uh, through the woods if they're being loud. But this shape is actually kind of specific to nest robbers, and that's why these birds were alarming. Is that skunks are nest robbers? They'll eat eggs from bird nests, and both the wren and the catbird don't make their nests on the ground, but they make them pretty close to the ground. Um, and it was nesting season. So it was kind of just like putting all those pieces together to tell the story of what was happening. Um, yeah, so that was pretty cool to see. And one thing that to note about that is like it was birds of different species, all alarming. And that's something to really look out for. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later.
I'm just going to tell one more story for myself. And uh, we go to Coleman State Park every year. And interestingly, up there, right around the end of September, all the robins, as they're kind of migrating farther south, tend to like stage on these like large pastures at Coleman State Park, which makes for a fun bird language. practice because they're large fields, and so the robins that are really far away don't even care that you're there. So, like, say 150 yards, they don't care. They're feeding, they're singing, um, whatever they are naturally doing in their baseline routine, which is like uh, they're not scared of anything going on. And a little bit closer in, say like 75 yards away from me, those birds are, they just might be still and they might just watch and then they might walk or run away um, and then do a little bit of feeding and then be still and look. Um, and so they're slightly agitated, but they're not flying away. They're not super alarmed. And then the ones even closer, say 50 yards, those ones are frozen and they're not moving at all. And they're looking. And so reading this body language is an important part of bird language. And then the ones, say, 40 or 30 yards away, those ones are making alarm calls. Uh, there's the whinny, and then there's
Oh,
uh, so they're making their alarm calls, which we actually have some.
that's what
Yeah.
they do. Yeah.
And so they're alarming, but they're not flying away. And then the ones closest to me, they're the ones that are alarming and then immediately flying away. And so you can see this whole spectrum of very alarmed, closest to me, to not even really paying attention to me. And I liked that because it it can really, if you take in what that means, like you can read how intense the alarm is or how intense the threat is to that animal if you get to know it well enough.
Yeah, and what it makes me think of is like all wild animals are conserving energy. So a bird is not going to put forth the effort to alarm and fly away if the danger is not real and immediate. So the ones that were so far away, they knew they didn't have a problem, just kept on doing what they needed to do to feed and yeah, all those levels is like just it's like you push the bird just as much as like the minimum amount that it will tolerate kind of
Hmm.
in order for them to conserve energy and time. Um okay, so I think this is my last story too. I think this was in there's some cool bird language DVDs that will also show you at the end the cover of. I think this is where I saw this video. There was someone who was studying bird language. They went to the city uh, and talked to people on the street, and they had different recordings. They had of robins. They had the song. They had the alarm call, and maybe something else. And they would stop people on the street. And presumably, these are people who don't have a lot of contact with nature on a daily basis. Though I guess that's questionable because there's a lot of nature in the city. Presumably, these were people who hadn't studied bird language. Um, and they'd play them the recording. So the robin song, cheerio, cheery me, cheerio. And ask, do you think this bird is in danger, agitated, happy, content? How do you think this bird is feeling? And everybody was able to say the singing bird is feeling comfortable and happy, right? It's obvious to us because, um, you know, like I said, it's hardwired into us, much in the same way that you can understand the body language and vocalizations of your cat or your dog, right? You know, you can communicate so closely with them and they don't speak a word. Um, it's the same thing with birds. It's just you've had a lot more practice with your cat and your dog. But we know how to do this innately. When they played the alarm call, people knew the bird was agitated. So it's kind of just a reassurance. Like it's more opening up and getting like a little bit of information, and then you can kind of just rely on a lot of intuition, I think, and observation. Um, okay. So what else do you want to draw out from those stories?
Just a little recap. So we had the stories, but we want to like kind of spell out for you what exactly we're um, or summarize what we're doing with those stories is there's an action, and that action is a perceived threat. And that causes reaction by the birds, either by their body language or by their voice or by them flying away. Um, and then we can then perceive the change in body language and voice, and then interpret um, any kind of movements and alarm signatures that Hillary was getting into. And we can interpret them to mean and what kind of animal might be influencing that bird. Um, and then the final thought that I have is that we are all in this together. And so that's the thought that the birds, even though they're different species, by helping each other out, it actually synergizes their likelihood that they'll be able to survive in these threatening moments. And there's plenty of studies that show that the deer are listening in to the birds, and that the birds might listening into the chipmunks. Or there are definitely certain birds that are more reliable. And so, like titmice and chickadees are very reliable for those canopy birds. And so animals know that if a titmouse is alarming, I better listen to what they're saying. Whereas, like a blue jay alarm, they're less reliable, and so the animals may not be as interested in what the blue jays are saying.
Yeah, although I know blue jays do also use bird language to their advantage. They'll alarm near a feeder to get other birds to move away. Though I guess they don't really need to. They kind of just plow in there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, now we're no, okay, we can do this. I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay. So, Five Voices of Birds, we've talked about this a little bit in our stories. What I really want to point out here is that the first four voices are baseline. Um, just going about regular life, everything is good, things are happening, but there isn't danger. And then the fifth voice is alarm. So the first one is song. It can be used to attract mates or to establish territories. Um, I'll actually play some audio recordings for you in just a minute to illustrate each voice. The second one is a contact call or a call. I mean, calls, I think it's mostly used to maintain contact with the group or the mate while moving through the landscape, feeding. Maybe the birds in the flock or pair can't see each other the whole time. It's just a little chip, 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 chip to let everybody know we're okay. The third voice is begging. So this you're gonna hear only at that time of year when birds are fledging from their nests. And I feel like I noticed begging a lot more through body language, but this is a young bird who's bothering their parents trying to get them to feed them. can also be used as a courtship behavior too. Uh, Mates will beg from each other to bond, and they'll feed each other too. And then the fourth one is male on male aggression. So that's like, I'm sure robins do it all the time. They're like two males, they're jumping around, alarming at each other. This is like a territorial thing. It looks a lot like an alarm, but something to look for is what are the other birds doing? So, like, the other birds know what's going on. They'll continue singing, feeding, going about their day, and ignore the two males that are having this interaction. And then the fifth language is alarm, and that means there's a threat. And like Kyle said, there's a bunch of different levels of threats and levels of alarms. And my favorite metaphor for this is something that Jon Young said on Seeing Through Native Eyes, which is like, think about a parent um, warning their child of danger. So the kids and the parent are walking on the road. The kid, they're gonna say one thing if the kid like if there's a car coming, right? They probably say car coming, move off to the side. Pretty low level of alarm. That's gonna go all the way through these different levels of alarms with like the panic alarm where the kid's running out in front of the car and the parents screaming, "Stop!"
Hopefully getting them too.
and grabbing But that kind of like really illustrated well to me like yeah, there's different kinds of alarms, different levels of danger. Um that's all I want to say. Oh, let me play some of those for you and then we'll go back to talking about alarms. Um well I yeah, I guess I'll do that now. And someone or Anna speak up if you can't hear this. This is a robin song. Everything's good. Was that loud enough for people to hear? Okay, cool. So yeah, obviously hearing that sound like makes my body relax. We know everything's good. Contact calls, this is an American goldfinch, um, maintaining contact with a mate. That's their potato chip call. Most birds have a song and a call, and some birds have a lot of other vocalizations too. Here's an example of a junco doing territorial aggression. I'm obviously you can see drawing right from this website. It's a really cool resource, birdlanguage.com. And they have these examples of the different voices of birds, but they also have um, 15 different species of birds and some of their vocalizations that you can explore. And this was put together by Dan Gardoki. So let's do the territorial, the male aggression. One thing I'm noticing about that recording is that there are other birds singing in the background. Um, so they're not worried. Of course, that was like a thrush. I don't know. There, if birds are alarming on the ground, some of those higher canopy birds are also going to ignore them because they're not worried about danger on the
It
ground.
depends on what threat is going
Hmm
on. So
hmm
if it's a ground threat like a bobcat, then only the ground birds are going to be most threatened by it. You know, your orioles at the top of the canopy aren't going to worry about the bobcat that's going through.
hmm
Whereas if it's a Cooper's hawk or a sharpshin, that that is literally the equivalent of like someone going through town with a machine gun in their hands. It's like that
Terrifying.
is literally what's happening to them, and everyone's ditching, everyone's running into their house, and um, yeah.
We haven't really talked about mobbing very much, though I guess the parabolic alarm where the birds of different species were all coming towards the threat, because that's another kind of alarm that's kind of like counterintuitive. And so it's like when there's like an owl in the tree or some kind of like mid to low level threat, birds will actually come towards it and point at it and make a lot of noise. That makes it harder for that predator to function. And when birders pish, that's what they're doing is creating that type of alarm. Psh, 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 psh. Birds will come towards that, especially birds like chickadees and wrens will come towards that to see like what's the danger. Let's all make it obvious to everybody that there's something going on here. Um, okay, begging call from a song sparrow. When I see this or hear this, I often see the birds also like fluttering their wings a lot. And then here's a wren alarm call. Carolina wren.
It's interesting. I always associate their threats more like yeah.
That's, I was surprised to hear that. There's another recording of a house wren alarm that's more like the typical wren alarm.
Hmm.
But that, I mean, if you heard that and you were paying attention and someone asked you, how's this bird feeling? Let's just listen to it again. Like tense, high pitched, rapid fire. All right, let me go back to this. Um, okay, so when you're doing a bird sit, or when you're just walking around paying attention to bird language, um, there are certain birds that are going to be a lot better teachers of bird language, a lot more useful to you. And those are birds that tend to nest or feed on or near the ground. They tend to be, as you can see from these pictures, brownish birds, camouflaged birds, because of the danger that comes along with working in that environment. So things like sparrows, robins, juncos, wrens, and red-winged blackbirds. I have a picture in the upper right-hand corner of a female red-winged blackbird. They nest low down in reeds, and the males are a lot more visible, but the females are more camouflaged. Um, so, like Kyle was saying, most for the most part, you're going to want to ignore corvids like crows, ravens, or blue jays, and focus on these birds. But of course, if you see something from other birds, it's important too. Um, so I'm going to, oops, I'm going to kind of give some directions for like how you would go about doing a bird sit. Um, and some of you, a few of the people here are going to do that with Kyle, coming up, but other people could get a group together on your own to do this. It really, really helps to have more than one person because the idea is that you choose a landscape. In this case, we're choosing the area around Remick Park and the pond and the paths in Tamworth Village. And you spread out throughout that area. The mapping area is represented by the black square, and people are represented by the red dots. Um, so you spread out around the area and sit down You do 4 listening periods and you record what you see and hear. Then you come back together and map out everything that seems relevant to to bird language and to what's happening in the area. And as you map, you make connections between what one person saw or heard and what the other person saw or heard. For instance, one person may only have seen um, a hook, like maybe a song sparrow flew up from the ground to the top of a tree and started looking in one direction. But that person from their vantage point couldn't see why. Maybe the other person on the other side of the pond could see the red fox walking along the path that was causing that alarm. Um, and so in this way, you piece together uh, different events that happened in that area during that time span um, in order to better understand like what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of just like logistical things is people sit in kind of a low-key place where they're not right out in the middle and they stay quiet and still the whole time. You're not moving in between periods. You are in the same place the whole time. Um, it can be really helpful to bring a cushion or a chair. You definitely want a notebook and pencil. And it's really helpful to have a watch or your phone to keep time because you're going to we do 10-minute periods, right? 4 10-minute periods. Um, one person who's keeping the time might do some sort of call or signal in between the time periods so that you can change to the next one. And this just helps with like, so that you don't have to write down like the time of every observation. You just clump your observations into 4 periods. Um, yeah. Do you want to do more like good practices?
I don't know if we have that right now. The scenarios.
Oh, okay. So what do you want to do next?
Um, so that's the practice that we're doing this weekend with everyone. So we're going to go out as a group, and basically, like I was saying, it takes about 20 minutes for the animals, the birds, to calm down, and for everything to go from alarm as we're kind of moving through the environment to calm
Baseline.
baseline again, and then. Uh, the thought is that we might have some predators, whether that's a some kind of a Cooper's hawk or a sharpshin. In the past, we've had cats, we've had foxes. Um, can't remember other things. We've had like red-tailed
Hawk.
hawks or something.
Hmm.
Had a juvenile eagle one time.
Hmm.
Um, and so even though I may not see it because I'm way over to the north of the mapping part, um, and I might be facing north, the person just to the south of me might be looking over my back and see a sharpshin hawk fly behind me and understand why there are a bunch of alarms behind me that I didn't. I heard the alarms, but I didn't see anything happening because I had to turn around, and in that amount of time, that threat was already gone. And so that's the fun part about doing it as a group is that you really get to um, cast a large net and um, see everything that's going on. And maybe one person sees the fox in cover, whereas the other person is just seeing uh, the sparrows alarming or something like that.
I was just looking to see if I could find an image. I forgot to bring, oh, there might be an image on the website, but you use different colors for each different period, and you start out with a map of the area in black and show where each person is sitting. And the different colors for different periods really helps with kind of sorting everything out in your mind. And it's really like a process, not a product, a process of conversation and seeing like what observations are relevant and which are not. And that takes a lot of practice too. So it's okay if it's messy. It's okay if it's inconclusive. It's okay if yeah, you don't make any connections. It's more just like the process of having these conversations about what you saw and your ideas about what might have caused it. And I think like if a group of people did it together over time, they'd get really good at it.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of skill involved in like facilitating it too that people can get better at.
Yeah. And just because it's a lot of fun doing it as a group, but that doesn't mean that you have to have a group to go out and practice bird language. You can do that anytime. Some of the best bird language moments I've had were like what Hillary had with the skunk is like we were inside and we just heard the bird alarms outside. We didn't, we weren't even out there or thinking about bird language, but because with some practice, we've been tuned into what alarms sound like. We're like, oh my God, what's going on out there? And then we went outside and had this great wildlife viewing that we wouldn't have known about if we weren't kind of um, tuned into that.
I just thought of one other story is like I was in the house and looking across the street to the front yard of the library here in Tamworth Village, and I saw a robin really agitated and alarming, and I saw a red squirrel stole a nestling from the nest and was like eating it. It was pretty gory, but interesting. Um, I have this. Oh, do you want to say anything more before the resources?
Yeah, just to do a few things to recap. So Hillary had kind of mentioned this before, but there's a trade-off. And so, like, the birds will only be so agitated relative to the threat. And so they're balancing vigilance with basic necessities. If they were too vigilant, then they wouldn't have enough time to feed and take care of themselves. And if they were too, uh, say, hungry and just wanted to feed all the time, they wouldn't be vigilant enough and they would get picked off by a threat. And so it's all a matter of conservation of energy and that trade-off where I'm being vigilant enough to see the threats coming, but not overly so. Um, and Hillary had mentioned checking for baseline. Just because you hear an alarm, if it's just male on male
Aggression.
aggression, and it sounds very similar to the alarm calls. Um, but if like juncos are doing the male on male aggression right there, but there's a wren just 10 feet away doing their song, that means that the baseline is still pretty normal and that there is an actual alarm going on. Read body language, listen to the tone, so like the intensity of the sound. Notice intense movements, like I was saying, the birds that were ditching into the bushes. Um, we say ignore corvids, but they can have fun stories to tell as well. It's just that as you're practicing bird language, you really want to listen to the birds that are going to be most reliable.
Corvids do a lot of mobbing. So if like sometimes you can find, like I said, an owl in a tree because the blue jays are loud and surrounding the tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Hillary had mentioned this as well. We have the hardware already, and so learning the process and kind of practicing is really just the software upgrade that we need to be able to use this effectively.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, we have some references here. These are the ones that we use, and I haven't actually read Eavesdropping on Animals. I really want to. I don't have it yet, but I did listen to an amazing podcast, and it's on Naturalist Studies podcast. And the guy that wrote that book is being interviewed, and his ability to imitate mammal calls is unlike anything else I've ever heard. Like
Cool.
he's talking, he gives the actual coyote yelps of when a wolf is within like 50 or 100 yards, or which is different from how the mountain lion affects the yelps that the coyote is giving. And so it's a similar topic, but it's broader. So like animal language rather than just bird language. So highly recommend listening to that podcast on naturalist studies.
Cool. And then this bird language basics with the sun rays coming out, that's the DVD. So if you learn well from videos, that is a pretty cool one, and it shows a bird sit being conducted and mapped. So I think seeing that is probably the best way to really understand how it works.
Jon Young also has some audio files that you can just you purchase them and then you download them onto your computer. And it's a whole advanced bird language audio file, and he
Hmm.
just kind of goes through what we did just now, but a little bit more in depth. So if you want something to have on your computer that you can listen to anytime to give you a refresher, that's nice.
Oh, and just like a plug for Seeing Through Native Eyes, it's not just about bird language. Um, it's about a lot of different topics and kind of life-changing, actually. Like very, very interesting to listen to. He's a great storyteller and mostly teaches through stories. So,
If anyone wants to join us on Saturday, we do still have slots available. So New England Wildlife Tracking .com.
mhm, can register there. Um, I'm ready to open it up to any questions if people have any or comments.
We do still have spots open for the Whitaker Wander 5K Saturday at 9 a.m. as well.
That's my
What we do.
sister, so she can.
What we do. Sorry.
You get this one pass.
So yeah, what time is your thing on Saturday?
Oh, it's 5:40 a.m. So you could do both. Yeah. Laura, did you have a
I did, thanks. And my battery's about to die, so hopefully enough. Can you give us some of the chickadee calls? I know we can get online to the audio, but just I'm happy because they always do the chickadee dee dee dee, when I'm coming to the feeder.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're alarmed or they're excited. Do you know any of those?
So yeah, the chickadee noise is actually their alarm.
but
And the intensity of the alarm is relative to how many Ds there are. And so like humans usually get like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6. And so that's pretty low. But then you start getting oh, what's that small owl?
sourdough?
Saw-whet owls. They'll get like 20 Ds. And so chickadees will mob owls, which is amazing. And so I think it was 2 years ago. I do chimney work, and so I'm always outside, and I can practice bird language while I'm working on chimneys. And this one time, I was just I heard these chickadees, and they were giving like 15 Ds. Um, and I looked over, there were like probably 3 or 4 chickadees over there, and they were mobbing a barred owl. So
Yes, so I am looking at the bird language audio files right now. Let me if I can really quickly share my screen. Um, the chickadee, like Kyle said, more D's, more threats. But it says it can also communicate about a food source. So they could be D'ing at you because you're bringing out food. So it's not, yeah, the chickadee call is like very, there's a lot of uses for it.
Hmm.
Um, but that is cool about the number of D's. And
This is their song, though.
yeah, the song, the sound of spring, and then their call. Ooh. And then this is like a more intense, this is the alarm. Hmm.
You notice how the intensity and um, the the phrasing is much tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, the tension is just higher.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anything else? Any other questions or comments?
Those were great stories. Thank you. I have so many videos because I do a lot of game camera videos, but I have so many of like when you're talking about alarms and bobcats. I've got several bobcat ones with a Vireo just out of off screen, just going nuts. And that bobcat is a young one. He's walking on a log, and he just wants that thing. His tail is flickering. I mean, he's just going, "Why are you telling everybody about me?" And you can just see how agitated the bobcat was. And another one last year, um, another bobcat, just heard we were inside at my friend's house over in Sandwich and just heard the crows going nuts. And whenever I hear that, I always want to go see what, that's they're alarming on something. Walk out there, and sure enough, here comes a bobcat like 2 minutes later walking out of the
Wow.
woods. So you
Oh,
really
cool.
pay attention to your surroundings, and you really do. It does tell a story, like you were saying.
Very cool. Especially with bobcats, which you never get to see. So,
Question. I sometimes imitate a bird and see if I can get it, to reply or respond. Is there any good or bad of doing that?
I've heard, well, first of all, that's cool because that's how you learn, that's how you really learn the voices of birds, I feel like, is like imitating and saying it back to them. Um, I have heard in like birding circles, sometimes people are not really keen on playing recordings of a bird song or a call while birding because it could put maybe stress if like it was the birds were perceiving more males in the territory or something or whatever. But I don't think our own imitations are going to cause any harm because we're just not that good at it. Like most of us aren't. What are your thoughts on it?
Um, yeah, I recently heard Matt Nelson, who's a really great tracker, talk about following deer. And so for the longest time, I was always told, don't follow deer in winter. Like it's really bad for them. And
They use a lot of energy moving.
yeah. And his take was, well, it actually just makes the deer better. And so what he means by that is that um, like we are not the biggest threat that they have, even if we are like pursuing them just to see them or something like that. Um, like they have to worry about much greater threats. And so if they're unaware of us or if they're becoming highly disturbed just because of a bumbling human, They have bigger problems. Um, but at the same time, I would not go in on that deer day after day after day. And so just be mindful of what you are doing. And so I think it's fine to play around and um, make that a part of your practice outside. But yeah, if it's like summertime, I wouldn't worry about it at all because they just have so many resources available to them.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to hear your bird calls sometime, Hope.
It's just an occasional thing. If I hear one and, it's like, oh, I can do that. So I'm
Mhm.
not doing it in the same place frequently when I think of it, when I notice. And it doesn't really help me learn what bird it is because I don't know, you know, I don't know.
But it's still helping you like tune your ear, I think.
Yeah, yeah, good.
I
Thanks.
yeah, I always make noises back at ravens though.
Yeah, that's true.
I think just because you mentioned learning bird calls, I think most people know about this now, but there's an app called Merlin, um, and it lets you record sound and it will identify the birds that you're hearing. And it's a really cool tool. I don't use it that much. I don't know why, but it did let us know one time that we were hearing a blue vireo. Is that even a species? Remember that? Okay, so it's a great tool to learn your bird calls.
Yeah, I learned how to um, bird by ear, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now. And I learned it through Peterson's Birding by Ear. I highly recommend it. And what they do is they break down um, like into categories different groups of songs, which may or may not this species may or may not be related, but they just sound similar. And so it's a you can kind of just go through this like key of, oh, is it complex? Is it two noted? Is it kind of guttural sounding? And so you can kind of narrow down your list of options. And so that's how I learned it. There's also a website called larkwire.com. Highly recommend it. They do a similar thing and they also gamify it as well. And so you can actually turn learning into a game and become a better birder with that. I love it. I think it's like a one-time payment of like $30. It's
Hmm.
like very worth the investment. They also have an app. I think you have to subscribe to that one. And I like Merlin, but I like having that background that I can actually have a solid knowledge of. And if I'm just not sure of something, I use Merlin as a
Mhm.
backup.
David.
Is it, I mean, there are so many species out there. And, we hear birds with our feeders. We hear a number of songbirds. I'm interested in knowing if there is a source, and maybe it's bird language basics that can teach me those five voices that you've mentioned that you would hear with each of the species. So I'd like to know what those voices are with the red-winged blackbird, for example, or with the chickadee, or with the robin, so that I can remember that and then listen for those when I'm out walking in nature, for example.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that once you start learning those different voices, that it will just you might start having some intuition about it as well. But I think that birdlanguage.com website that I was using um, to play the vocalizations,
Mhm.
can you screen share? Yeah. Would be a great place to start. I'll screen share you and you have to, oh, you did it.
I can do
You
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
so this is birdlanguage.com resources, and then so I think it's here, vocalizations list. And then they have, I think, 74 different vocalizations, and they go through American Robin. So that's
Nice.
5 different voices, and then Dark-eyed Junco. So this is a really good resources specific to your question.
yeah, and I would recommend just starting with the one or two most common species that you see at your feeder so you don't get overwhelmed. And a robin is a really good one to start with.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Looks like that might be it, Anna.
Okay. And I just want to add that I have been playing imitation with a chickadee, but I didn't know it was a chickadee until this. So thanks for
That's
that.
cool.
Been doing that on my deck most mornings. So this was so fascinating and informative. Thank you so much, Hillary and Kyle. So we will post the recording to this, and I'll send it out to everyone who registered, along with some links to our website and Hillary and Kyle's website. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for zooming in.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Have a
everyone.
great night.
You too.
Thank you, guys.